Today, I'm going to focus in on another famous director from Japan that I have recently taken an interest to, that of course being Yasujiro Ozu. Ozu has a very long film career, and I have seen a good amount of his movies, starting with silent films in the 20s to talkies in the 30s and color films in the 50s. Ozu's career spans over many important historical shifts in film history, yet at the core of Ozu's filmography, one theme became more and more prevalent: the relationship between parent and child. I could do an examination of this theme by looking over a larger portion of films he directed, but today I want to focus on his final film, 1962's An Autumn Afternoon. I will not claim that my review and examination of this film will be unaffected by the other Ozu films I have seen, but I do seek to find something out by taking a closer look at this one particular movie. The film is structured in a way that may be unfamiliar to some. The movie doesn't exactly invite an inciting incident to get the plot going, nor does it give us a comprehensive list of who the characters are at the beginning. Instead, we are simply dropped into this world and spend time with the characters as the pieces slowly come together before falling apart again. It's comparable to suddenly living with a new family you have never interacted with before, and slowly finding out their lives from brief interactions and hearsay. This is a very slow burn type of drama that allows the characters to really be fleshed out. The characters are who form the plot and push it forward. This small segment of their life we are shown is a transition period, being pushed not by worldly matters but by the characters' desires. I'll explain. Mr. Hirayama, played by the lovely Chishuru, is an aging businessman and widower with 3 children. His first son has already married and left the house. His other 2 children are already young adults but still live at home. These children being a son named Kazuo and a daughter named Michiko. The film is primarily told through Mr. Hirayama's point of view, and it is quickly established that Michiko, being the woman of the house in the absence of the mother, is the caregiver. At the urging of his friend and seeing the state of one of his former teachers, Hirayama takes an initiative to get this daughter of his married so she can leave the house. Michiko wishes to stay at home, and Hirayama isn't keen on marrying her off, and was actually initially against it. The characters could have just done nothing and lived out their lives as they always had. Then maybe I was wrong to say the plot isn't affected by worldly matters. It actually is, just not in an obvious way. Why does Hirayama actually marry his daughter off? First, there's his close friend who insists that he does so. The friend doesn't just come out of nowhere with this. They fear the consequences of Michiko growing too old and never marrying. This belief is reinforced when the pair come across their old school teacher. The teacher is a widower like Hirayama and has a daughter. The teacher feared growing old alone and put off his daughter's marriage, until eventually there were no more opportunities. The 2 now live together running a run-down noodle shop. The teacher regrets his life decision, and the effort her daughter is putting into caring for her father is taking an emotional strain on her. Realizing that this outcome may happen to his daughter as well, Hirayama makes the selfless decision to give up his daughter. This leaves him all alone, but he does not have to suffer any guilt. Except that isn't the full picture. That's what we see on the surface, but I believe there is more. Hirayama is a person that seems to lack conviction with almost everything. He has secured a comfortable life for himself after the war and is taking each day as is without much thought to anything overarching. Take into account when he comes across an old war buddy and they go to a bar and discuss the outcome of the conflict. His war buddy proclaims how much he wanted Japan to have won and imagines what that world would have looked like. Hirayama offhandedly says that it was good that Japan lost without mentioning anything more. It's up to his war buddy to fill in the gap by mentioning that it is nice not to be bullied by the militarists any longer. We see that Hirayama does have a belief, but he doesn't feel like putting it into the world and defending it. At most, he will voice that belief but leave it there. It seems that he is someone stuck in time. When he visits the bar, he connects the bartender to his deceased wife, feeling they look the same. His son who visits later does not share the same sentiment. Then at the end of the film, we are shown a depiction of Hirayama we haven't seen before. Earlier, he somewhat entertained his war buddy's antics, saluting him as he danced to the Gunken March. However, now in a drunken state, knowing his daughter will leave him, he begins singing the lyrics full-heartedly, much to the confusion of his youngest son, who seems not to have any memory of the conflict. I can't be certain, but I think this reveals why Hirayama is so distant. The war has never ended for him. His battles have changed, but not his attitude. He will do what he must. This brings into question if it was worth it. Obviously, the first battle he was in was lost. The United States won. The war was fought without meaning and saw Japan plunged into fire. His wife and kids back home were forced to survive that situation. In the end, it was a war better to never have been fought. When Hirayama returned home, the war was not to protect his children. Hence, he kept a close eye on them, especially Michiko. It's possible, though not confirmed, his wife died as a consequence to the war, which would perhaps increase a feeling of guilt and a feeling of responsibility in this occupation. When it came time to give up his daughter, he understood that mission. He already had to give up a lot when he was sent off to fight, but that was the goal. Just like how the war was ultimately lost, did they win the war of Michiko. In this conflict, Michiko is once again left without agency. As her country decided it was time for war, so too does her culture demand it is time for her to marry. She is only 24, which by today's standards is hardly considered nearing the end of a marriageable age. Even now, while still very much anticipated, no one has to get married. In this time frame, a woman wasn't left with much prospects if they didn't marry. However, if they did marry, that would still be the end of their prospects, as they would be expected to quit work and raise children. Yet, if they don't marry, they're labeled an old housewife who has wasted their life. We see both of these played out with different characters. First, the aforementioned teacher's daughter, who lives her life caring for her father. Second is Michiko's sister-in-law, Akiko. While her marriage isn't necessarily terrible, it is frustrating. She has to put up with a guy who really wants expensive golf clubs when money is already as tight as it is. It's arguable as to whether or not this is the better outcome, but it is the accepted outcome. There's a brief anecdote from the war days that Michiko brings up in the film that I'll mention here. The kids and their father are discussing their late mother. They speak of the clothes she used to wear, and Michiko remarks that during the air raids their mother even wore her father's trousers. It's a quick remark, but it speaks to a deterioration of customs in the face of destruction. It's completely benign now, but back then it was enough to know, a break in the idea of continuity, essentially solidifying that all of this was just for show, yet they still follow these normal customs after the war concludes. In an attempt to bring back that continuity, because that continuity is comfortable. But at the end of the day, that continuity is made up in order to enforce the power structures at play. Michiko is not afforded much in choice. Even the initial man she has come to love and desire to marry has already been engaged. While she is told she doesn't have to marry the man her father and her father's friends have found for her, the pressure exists and is inescapable. Truthfully, she doesn't actually have a choice in the matter. The pressure to conform to the expectation is too much to fight back against alone. It's a very patriarchal world. Kazuo, the youngest son, has their future in education. It isn't even questioned about marriage. In the end, both man and woman are expected to work, just the woman's labor is unpaid, and the man's labor becomes all-encompassing until there's nothing else to them. Yet they follow the story of how the system works because perhaps it benefits them in some small way. Perhaps they believe that it will lead to somewhere that it doesn't actually lead. The film's ending scene sees Mr. Hirayama sitting alone in his almost empty house, down yet another family member due to the system, taking in his new reality. The relationship between a parent and child may be the closest any two humans can be, and it is in that immeasurable gap that still exists between them that suffering is found. In both good and bad parent-child relationships, this separation is present, and ultimately there will be a final separation. Fear of being alone is what drives this narrative, because people will come together for anything so long as they don't have to be alone. This fear is what drives everything that happens. Hirayama is aware of what it feels like to be alone, and as such decides that his daughter's temporary happiness be shattered, so she may not have to grow old by herself. Fear of being alone outweighs the fear of choosing the wrong lifetime partner. In the end, they both suffer the consequences of upending their lives. Change is a part of life and inevitable. It isn't always met with celebration, and neither are we always aware of it happening. When everything finally comes together at once, the result can feel jarring. Yet these characters and their situation just keep going. They persist through what they are given, which is admirable, but it can mean that in the process of trudging forward, they only ever focus on each foot in front of the next, missing what is around them. I don't know how to end this video, so I guess I will leave it here.